Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Anthony Salas, and on behalf of the American Marketing Association, I'd like to welcome you to today's webcast sponsored by Curata and Percussion, titled Content Marketing, Make It Work. We here at the AMA provide you with this webcast as one of the many special programs that we offer to the marketing community, and we invite you to keep joining us for these ongoing free web seminars that help you drive the greatest return on your marketing investment. Whether it's in research, advertising, promotions, social media, and beyond, these webcasts offer education in all key areas of marketing, so make sure to join us for these informative thought leader webcasts featuring some of the most expert minds in marketing. You can go to marketingpower.com/webcast for more information, as well as upcoming webcast dates on there. Before we do get started, I would like to cover just a few housekeeping items. Our webcast today is being recorded and will be made available to you very shortly. If you have any technical or content-related questions as the presentation goes on, please use the chat feature located to the left of your screen. Technical questions will be addressed immediately upon receipt, and content-related questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation. Again, however, enter those at any time as the presentation does progress. And we also invite you to join us today on Twitter. The hashtag for today's webcast is on your screen now, and that is @ContentWorks. So please join us there for conversation and more tips there. So we're very excited to have our speakers with us today. We've got a lot of great information that they're going to be sharing. We have Pawan Deshpande, who is the CEO of Curata, as well as Aaron Dun, who is the Vice President of Marketing and Strategy with Percussion. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Pawan, who's going to get us started.
Thanks a lot, Anthony, and welcome everybody, and thank you for attending today's AMA webinar. I'm really excited to be here along with Aaron. My name, again, is Pawan Deshpande. I'm the CEO of Curata, and Curata is a content curation platform that lets marketers easily find, organize, and share relevant content to their customers. I'm hoping to share some of the best practices that we share with our customers and that we've seen our customers take themselves as content marketers to really make content marketing work. And I'm also happy to be joined by Aaron of Percussion Software. Aaron?
Thanks, Pawan, and nice to be with you all today. This is Aaron Dun, the Vice President of Marketing and Strategy for Percussion Software. Percussion is a web content management software company, and our products are really designed for content marketers to help you go from planning to writing to publishing and then ultimately measuring the value of your content and the value of your efforts. Looking forward to this today. Thanks for the introduction.
Great. And so today's webinar is about content marketing. Some of you may have only heard of content marketing but haven't done it yet. Many of you may be doing it already. Others of you may be very experienced with it when it comes to content marketing. But regardless of your level of familiarity with content marketing, it's hard work at the end of the day. And that's because content marketing requires marketers to act and behave as publishers, which is often a different hat that they have to wear. So in today's webinar, we're going to really talk about how to make content marketing work and work well. We'll start with a quick definition of what content marketing is. We'll go over an overview of what makes it so hard to pull off for many organizations, and we'll spend the bulk of the webinar going through 8 common complaints that we hear from content marketers, sprinkled with plenty of case studies on how actual real-world brands are using content marketing and how they're making it work for themselves. Lastly, we'll wrap up with some takeaways, hopefully that you can start using today, at the end of the webinar, and at the end we'll entertain questions. So before we dive in, Aaron and I want to get a better sense of where everyone is currently at with their content marketing expertise. So here's a quick poll question. Please go ahead and submit your responses. And the question here is, what is your content marketing level? Are you a beginner? Are you someone who's just heard of content marketing, maybe just started dabbling with it, or wants to get started? Are you someone who's intermediate? You have some experience under your belt, and you're currently doing some of it, but you still have kind of some things to learn that you think you can improve on. Or are you advanced and you know a lot about content marketing, but you're really here for the webinar to learn how you can do more, how to really make it work for your organization? So please go ahead and fill out the poll. Aaron, any sense of where you think people are going to be at? I mean, what do you hear when you talk to people on their level of expertise? Is content marketing well known in your opinion, or a lot of beginners out there, a lot of intermediate, advanced?
I think some people are probably a little shy to say that they're a beginner, but I think that content marketing as an initiative has been certainly talked about a lot this past 18 months, 2 years, and certainly a lot of people are diving in. So I would expect that some people have made that jump already and probably would fashion themselves as intermediate. And as the numbers come in here, Anthony, we might as well go ahead and just close the poll. It looks like we're heavily weighted towards both beginners and intermediates, and just a few of you are advanced. So we'll try to keep it interesting for everybody, and dive right in. So if we jump into starting with a definition of what is content marketing. There's lots of definitions out there. You might have your own favorite definition. I particularly like the one from the Content Marketing Institute, certainly one of the organizations that's in charge, if you will, of shepherding the industry and the definition forward. At the end of the day, whatever words you use to define it, content matters. You need to be using content and to drive engagement with your prospective customers. You need to be using content to tell your story and ultimately to move your business forward. And again, lots of different businesses here represented on this call, I'm sure. So whether or not you're a B2B organization or a B2C, college and university, or a government agency, using your content to move your objectives is key. There's lots of great examples out there as it relates to content marketing. And Pawan, you want to talk just about the Red Bull real quick?
Yeah, and here's a very prominent and flashy example, probably that all of you have heard of. In case you haven't, Red Bull last year sponsored a 23-mile-high jump of Felix Baumgartner from space. And besides YouTube, the jump was shown by more than 40 TV stations, 130 digital outlets. Red Bull's Facebook post-jump photo of Felix jumping had almost more than 200,000 likes. There were 10,000 comments on the photo, 29,000 shares within 40 minutes, and this is just on one photo alone. And half the worldwide trending topics on Twitter were somehow related to the jump. So just imagine, this is Red Bull creating original content in some ways. They're sponsoring this jump, creating original content, distributing, not only creating, but distributing it themselves. Imagine if they had to do this the other way around, the old way of doing it. Imagine if they had to pay for all these ads, all this TV coverage, for promoted tweet campaigns. Just think about how much that would have cost. Instead, Red Bull created the content themselves and really leveraged that to drive their brand forward. And I think this is just a really great example of content marketing. However, I do realize that Red Bull has a much larger budget probably than you do, and B2B organizations may not really get value in sponsoring a guy to jump from space. So Aaron's going to talk through an example that's a little more B2B related.
Yeah, it's funny, back in the day we probably would have called the jump from space a publicity stunt, but now we get to call it content marketing. It's really the intersection of doing something really creative and unique that's really true to your brand, and then carrying that through all of the various activities, advertising, PR, disciplines, etc. A little closer to home, many of you are probably familiar with Eloqua. Many of you may in fact be Eloqua users, or certainly users of marketing automation software. If you think about it in B2B though, they have done a fantastic job of really defining what and how you can tell your story, and you can use tools like your blog, like your website, like your social media channels to move that message. So interestingly enough, when they started with content marketing, they just had a blog and a really fantastic SlideShare portal, or they used SlideShare as a portal, and they were able to use some very dynamic imagery to tell the story about how revenue, performance management, and marketing automation could really move their business forward. They parlayed that into a successful IPO, and as many of you know, more recently were acquired by Oracle. So that would consider a successful exit, I imagine. And they, everything that they were doing was really centered on trying to engage people, at each of these different channels and at each different intersection point along the way, with a very singular message. Again, the case for content. If we dug in a little bit deeper, let's really get into how are we going to make that work with that as a background.
Yeah. So, we kind of know that content marketing works out there. So if it works and it works so well, why aren't more people doing it? Well, the reason is content marketing is hard to get to work well, and that's what we're going to talk about in this webinar. And just to show that this is a common problem, earlier this year we ran last year in 2012, we ran a survey, and we asked more than 400 marketers what are the greatest challenges they have that come to mind when they are doing content marketing. And often marketers have more than one challenge, so we let them pick more than one choice here. And the top results that we found through our survey were that creating original content and having time to do it were the biggest challenges, followed by finding high-quality content, allocating staff to do it, difficulty measuring results. So it's about having the resources to do content marketing. That's a big challenge, whether it's staff, time, or just even creativity. So that was a big challenge that we saw. And another survey run by the Content Marketing Institute indicates the same results as well. Aaron, Aaron, do you want to go over these?
Sure. Yeah. So when it's interesting to see that B2B Magazine and Content Marketing Institute and Marketing Frost have all done studies here, and they really echo the results that Curata found from your own study, which usually when you have three surveys or 3 polls that come up with the right data, Nate Silver would tell us you have a poll of polls and you've got some really high quality data there. And certainly the top 3, excuse me, producing enough content, producing the right kind of content that engages, the variety of content. It's really about volume, quality, and value. There's also an issue of time. In this particular study, I think that's expressed here as it relates to resources. People are really concerned about how can I find time to do content marketing in my day, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into the complaints. This next slide here is actually the data from B2B Magazine. And again, we see something very similar. The top 2 are content related. And again, volume, quality, resources are really key pain points for folks as you think about how do you execute a content marketing strategy, which takes us to our next poll, I believe.
Yeah, so we're going to ask you here, these are some of the challenges that we're going to talk about on today's webinar. So we want to ask you, what are your biggest content marketing complaints? And keep in mind, you may have more than one complaint, more than one challenge you're facing when it comes to content marketing. And so please go ahead and pick them. And the different choices here are, 1, picking a topic. How do you decide what to write your content on? Not getting enough content, insufficient content. Not only creating content, but then how do you distribute it? So distributing content, employee participation, getting other people and employees to help you with content marketing. Kind of figuring out the balance between quantity and quality. Measuring the efficacy of your content marketing program. Kind of deciding the tone and the voice of your content. Sharing your content. And then lastly, getting content marketing to meet your goals and objectives. So not just content marketing for content marketing's sake, but how do you get that to kind of meet your business objectives. So please go ahead and fill this out, and we'll take a look and see what are the greatest challenges. Okay, it looks like we have some results, and I'm going to go ahead and close the poll here. And it looks like insufficient content is the biggest challenge, which is not surprising. The last 3 surveys that we just showed you on the previous slides indicate that is the biggest challenge. So no surprise there. Aaron, I think that's what we were expecting going into the poll.
Definitely.
Followed by measurement, quality versus quantity, employee participation, and then how do you get content marketing to meet your goals and objectives, followed by the other few. So we're going to cover all these things here and hopefully give you some good takeaways that you can start implementing today. So with that, let's dive into the top 8 complaints, and we'll just go methodically through each one and hopefully give you some case studies and ways you can improve here as well. So the first one here is, how do I pick a topic? And a few ways I've heard people vocalize this complaint is they may ask questions like this. What do our prospects want to read? Are people really going to be interested in what I have to say? If I blog this, or do people actually care about this? And there's so much content out there already. Everyone's doing content marketing. My competitors are. How can I be unique, and how can I stand out? So a big challenge for a lot of content marketers, the very first kind of baby step in the content marketing is to pick a topic. And a lot of people find that challenging. So I often kind of advocate for a three-part framework, and I'll walk you through this, that weighs the competitive landscape, the audience interest, and the content landscape together to really find a topic that works for you. So let's walk through this a step at a time. So the first thing you do to find a great topic is to look at your competitors. The question you have to ask here is, what is a topic that my competition is not covering sufficiently? And when I say competition, this is not necessarily your marketplace competition. It could be if your competition is already content marketing and creating content online. You do want to look at them. But it could also be trade publications. It could be media outlets. It could be bloggers. Where are all the other places that people, your prospects, can go online for the topic that you want to publish content on? That's really your competition when it comes to content marketing. And there are a few ways of going about finding what your competition is like for a given topic. You can just do a simple Google search for your topic and see what are the top results that come up. You can look on social media. Who are the sources and authoritative figures who keep posting relevant content on this topic? Or you could use Google's keyword tool, which is meant more for AdWords and pay-per-click campaigns and bidding on related keywords. But a cool thing they do is they also give you the search volume. So you could see for a given topic how many people are actually searching for that topic. And that helps you weigh how much competition there is for that. The next part in the three-part process is to figure out your audience interests. So is your topic something that your audience is actually interested in, or is it something that you think is trendy, but it may not draw in the right audience for you? And on what topic is it? Can you pick a topic that you can really be unique on, be an expert and authority on? So a few tools you can use. One is a messaging framework. If you have a messaging framework for marketing, look at really what your differentiators are. What's your unique point of view as a company? Look at surveys and polls. Maybe you can run a survey and poll on your audience. What type of information, what publications do they tend to read? Where are there gaps in terms of the content that they're not finding online? And then lastly, the sales team is a great resource. Go ask your sales team, what are the challenges and questions that people often have, sales call after sales call, and that's often a great place to start with content marketing. Lastly, you have to look at the content landscape. So find a topic that has sufficient existing content, because if you're the only one out there talking about it, there's probably a reason for that. Either it doesn't matter, or it's just hard to create a conversation if there's no one else talking about the same thing. So you can look and see how much content is already being produced about that topic using tools like Google News and blogs. You put in your query and see how many new articles are being published every day. Your PR firm, they may have a media monitoring list. So what are the publications they're monitoring, and how much content is being produced out of there? Or you can run a search on Twitter and just monitor how much content is being posted on that topic. So at the end of the day, you take all these three different ingredients, you tie them together, and you really want a topic that passes all three of these tests. You want a topic that your audience is interested in, where you don't have a lot of competitors, yet you have content, where other people are talking about it, so that if you wanted to curate content, or if you wanted to add to a conversation, there's something to add to at the end of the day. And once you have all three of these together, you really have a great topic. Just to show you a use case and example of a company that I think has done a great job with bringing together these three aspects. This is one that I often cite. It's a company called Verne Global, and they're a data center in Iceland. So they have an energy-efficient geothermal data center in Iceland, and the topic they identified is green data centers, green IT. And the way this works is that there's a lot of topic out there, a lot of content out there about green and clean energy. There's a lot of content out there about IT and cybersecurity and cloud computing, but there's not a lot of topic right at the intersection of green IT. It's something that caters to their audience interest. It's something that a lot of CIOs and CTOs and their target market cares about. It's something there's already content about, and it's something that there's not a lot of competition. No one else is specifically talking about those intersections of topics. So what they did is they created a curated site about this specific topic, and have kind of become the trade publication for their industry as a result. The next challenge, and the most common challenge as per the poll, is insufficient content. And these are often things that I hear from people who have this pain. They say, our blog hasn't been updated in 3 months. It's grown stale. I feel like I just finished writing a blog post and now I have to write another one. I can't think of anything new to say, or I wish I had a whole editorial staff. I wish I was built like a publication company. And at Curata, we often call this the content beast. It's something you have to feed constantly. You have to give it Facebook posts. You have to get blogs, microsites, case studies, videos, ebooks, webinars, data sheets, podcasts. You have to keep giving it content, and it wants more and more of different types of varieties and different items on its menu. And the worst thing is as soon as you give it content, it's gone. It eats it up, and you have to publish yet another blog post, yet another tweet. It's just a never-ending process. And that's the pain of content marketing when it comes to insufficient content. So I'm not going to go through exact kind of tips and tricks here, but we do have a great resource that specifically talks about this on our website at curata.com/resources, where we go through different types of content, whether it's blog posts, newsletters, social media, podcasts, and we give specific recommendations on how you can feed more content to that content base, how you can produce more content. So we have an ebook called How to Feed the Content Beast with a foreword from Ann Henley, the author of Content Rules. So if you do want to dive in, please take a look there on these specific types of content. One trick that we often talk about, one strategy, is content curation, and that's really what Curata is founded upon, and that a lot of marketers are starting to take notice of, but is still kind of in the emergence phase. So content curation is the process where someone continually finds, groups, and organizes and shares the best and most relevant content on a specific issue online. So rather than creating all the content yourself, which can be taxing, you can curate other people's content that's relevant, that's pertinent to your audience. So you basically go out there and find all the relevant content on a specific topic, organize it, and then redistribute it with your own commentary and value add to your audience. So here are a couple of use cases of curation in action where brands have taken curation and used that as kind of the mainstay of their content marketing programs. This is a site by Intel. It's a site called IQ, where they go and curate content that's submitted from their employees. So employees will go and submit content. They have a team that solely is dedicated to curating the best of that content, and then they publish it out to their audience. Here's another example. This is one of our customers, the Color Association of the United States. Their mandate is to catch different trends about color. So what's the color of the season? What are emerging color trends among painters, for example? And what they do is they go and curate images and different fashion trends that relate to color. So they're going finding interesting third-party relevant content and bring it to the surface. Here's a more B2C example of a tiling company. This is Best Tile, Tile America, and they have a site called Everything Tile and Stone, where they go and curate different tips about how to decorate your home using tiling products. So again, these brands are not necessarily creating all the content themselves. A large part of it is done through curating content, which helps satisfy the content beast appetite.
Yeah, I'll pick up from here with our next problem, and I definitely that tile example resonates with me right now because I'm in the middle of renovating my kitchen, so maybe I'll go check that out when we're done. Whether you've got one piece or 101 pieces of content, what you do with it really matters, and really matters. Thinking about the different channels, thinking about the outlets that I want to put those pieces of content in, really gets at the heart of the issue. So where do I post it? How frequently should I be posting it there? How to leverage my social channels, and really attaching that or considering your buyer's journey as part of that content distribution. So, where are people in their buying cycle? What is my content, and how does it relate to where they might be in their own buyer's journey? So these are some of the key things to consider. And one approach that we have taken to here is thinking of your content as a meal. So you've got your appetizers, you've got your short form contents, things like Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. Of course, your entree, a little bit more meatier, blog, community, your own forums, other forums, microsites, things like that. And then we consider the website as your dessert. That's where all the good stuff happens, where oftentimes most people convert to leads or buyers or prospects on the website. You could even think of the nice bottle of wine that you chose and paired with your entrees as your key message that flows across the meal and pulls it all together. And then you can take it even one step further, and you could think about the setting or the ambiance of the restaurant that you're in, and that's your brand that is the finisher. And when all those things work in perfect harmony, when the wine is perfectly paired with the entree and the dessert and the coffee that comes after that, fit, you create a big impact and a big wow factor with what it is that you're doing. People will engage. People will brag about having been there. They'll tell all their friends on Facebook. They'll Instagram the picture of the meal to everybody, and they'll Yelp about it and how great it was. But when you get one of those things wrong, if they're not really connected and you're not really thinking about them holistically, you can really create some interesting challenges. Imagine, for example, if you went to McDonald's and you sat down with a white linen cloth, silverware, and a steak. It just wouldn't really fit with your expectation for the brand. And the reverse is also true, of course. If you go to a Morton Steakhouse and you have a poorly prepared steak, or you made a poor choice with your wine, then perhaps you might have had a bad experience. To give you a framework for tying those things together, it really starts with your content strategy. You need to know your objective of what you're trying to achieve with your content. Whether that's lead gen or demand gen, or if it's just simply for thought leadership, trying to speed content through the funnel. If you know what that objective is and you can apply that to your strategy, then you can really figure out kind of where you want to apply your content and where you want to distribute it. So you can think about your content on the upper left here as sort of your quote owned channels. It's your own website, your own blog, your own community that you can push your content through. Social sometimes can be considered earned media in the sense that, yes, you're putting your content out there, but then the dispersion effect is that content, other people are talking about you. You have a little less control over that. And then, of course, there's a number of different channels to manage that are more focused on engagement, like LinkedIn groups and Quora, comments on your content and other places. And then, of course, is the measurement. We're going to get into more measurement here in a minute, but you really got to know and be able to measure what works so that are your investments really paying off. If you nail this, if you can connect your content strategy to the different channels, then you really know how to solve it. Where should I distribute it, and how should I measure its success? This is an interesting example, from the For Dummies folks. Pawan, if you want to just kind of dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, this is a site about technical support from the For Dummies team, and they've done a really good job of distributing the content and kind of incorporating the different parts of the meal. So it's the same content, it's just in different forms. So if you look at each of the different boxes, one is the website, another is on Twitter, another is Facebook, another is the email newsletter, another is the RSS feed. So regardless of where you go, it's the same content that drives people back to their website where they can then convert people. So all of us have different preferences on how we want to consume content. Some of us, first thing in the morning, we go to and log in our email. Other people may go on Facebook. Other people may open their feed reader and read the news there. So I think it's important to give people a variety in terms of and choice in terms of how they want to consume the content. But that doesn't mean that it can't be similar or the same content across all those different channels.
Yeah, that's great. And then another challenge is content that exists in the organization, but you need to kind of dig it out. It's the term we use is siloed within your organization, or perhaps there's a roadblock with your technology and you can't get content out fast enough. And also, I know there's smart people in my company or my organization or my community, but I can't get them to contribute. So your content's stuck, and if you might have these silos. One of them might be tipped over on the other. You might feel like this on many days. Hopefully this isn't your farm. Whenever I ask people, hey, will you contribute a piece of content for my blog? People in the organization will say, yeah, of course, no problem. But then, unfortunately, they never deliver it because they get busy with other things. or they're willing to contribute, but your technology platform is not able to get content from those contributors through the publishing process and out onto your website, onto your blog, onto other channels. You may not even have a technology platform in place that makes it easy to contribute and publish from there. So one of the ways that we think about breaking down silos is really using the idea of how can we make it easy for folks within the organization to contribute content. So the first thing is really empowering them, right? If you can align the content development effort, with where their value is in the organization, it becomes a lot easier to, for them to see their way clear to kind of find that extra time in the day to produce something for you. Another way is to really think about, rather than asking them to produce something, why don't you go to them and sit down and say, hey, I need to ask you a few questions, and take those questions and turn that into a Q&A for your website or for your blog or into your channels. Or you could even videotape it, or videotape it, I guess we don't do that anymore. Take videos of it and post those videos online. Another great way is, rather than asking for content, ask for a very specific type of content. Say, look, I'd like you to write about this. We do a lot of things, within our own, communities about, content management technologies and content marketing technologies, of course, given what we do. And we really look at everything as content. So, when one of our support folks is, working with a, customer on a particular issue, we can take the resolution of that problem and turn that into a blog post. Or if we've got folks who are responding internally about a particular market event, we want to pull that content forward and bring it to our public channels. But really, the most important thing is to show them what happened after the fact. This is a great example from just the last couple of weeks. One of our sales leaders provided a blog post on connecting content marketing and sales. And for the kind of the week of the blog post, it actually wound up being our second most popular page on our website behind our homepage. And for us, individual results will vary, but for our blog on our website, these tweet numbers are pretty good for us. So we were very happy with that. So we definitely made sure to circle back with the contributor, make sure they knew the impact of their contribution, gave them a big round of applause in our sales bullpen. And so not only did he feel like he'd want to contribute more, but other people saw the value of what he was doing and were willing to have stepped up and asked to do more. So it really goes a long way when you can make it easy for people, and then you can really connect the dots after the fact. Which brings us to number 5.
Yeah. So number 5 is quality versus quantity. I think this is one of the higher ranked challenges that people are facing here. So here are different ways I've heard people asking about this challenge. Do I spend the next 6 weeks writing an ebook, or say instead invest the time in writing 10 blog posts? Or someone just asked us in the chat window here something along these lines. I feel most of my content is regurgitation. There's already people saying that, and I'm just adding to the noise there. I feel like I'm an echo chamber. So how do I produce quality content, not just quantity and kind of regurgitating content? So here's a framework that I often advocate for thinking about quality versus quantity. So content marketing is, you can think of it kind of like a pyramid. At the bottom, this foundation pyramid, you have curated content. So this is content that is often low effort. It's easy to produce. You're not actually creating the original content. You're more curating it and adding value on top of that. So that's something you can do often. It's low effort. A step above that is creating blog posts and website content, which is short form. And often the layer below you can help you do the next layer. So you can take your curated content, see what people are talking about. That'll often inform you of what you should be blogging about. You can do a top 10 list based on content you've curated in the past. So that often informs the next layer above you. Above blog posts are then infographics, webinars, presentations. These take even more time than writing a blog post. And blog posts, often you can take a couple of them that have a similar theme and develop a webinar, develop an infographic, a presentation, a talk track around that. You can often take a couple of webinars, stitch that together into an ebook or white paper, and then you tie a bunch of ebooks together and everything below, and you can even create a print book as well. So this is kind of how I think of it. The stuff at the top that's high effort and rare, stuff that's at the bottom low effort and often. But in reality, you need to do all of it. It's just thinking about how to do the right pieces. It's almost kind of like a food pyramid. You need to have a little bit of everything. But the cool thing is when people talk about repurposing content, you can move either up or down the pyramid. Let's say you're more inclined to sit down and write an ebook. You can always take the ebook, chop it up, make it a series of blog posts. Or if you like writing blog posts and short form is easier for you, you can always take those, group them together to produce ebooks. So you can always move up and down this pyramid very easily. So the other complaint about just regurgitating content, I want to show you a quick example of how you can add value in curation. Curation is not necessarily about just regurgitating what someone is saying. Here's the article about Yahoo. They recently acquired kind of a hobbyist content curation site called Snippet, where people can go and pin up articles they like and so forth. And they acquired them last month. So I saw this article. It was interesting. And then on our blog, what I did was I curated it. So I took it, and I took an abstract here that I found interesting. That's in block quotes here. And around it, I added my own title. I retitled it. I said, Yahoo to kill Snippet like how they destroyed Delicious. A little provocative title. And then my own take right around it. So curating is not just about taking someone else's content and posting out there and just kind of repeating what they said. It's really about adding your own perspective, adding some value add on top, and that's often what museum curators do. And that's how even in low effort ways you can add value and not just simply regurgitating content at the end of the day.
All right, so we talked about measurement, or hinted at measurement earlier, and this is, for my money, one of the areas that people are going to be extremely, or should be extremely focused on in the coming year. And it's really, it's not only just measurement, but it's also, what is getting at the heart of the value of why we're doing all this kind of work. Because it's not easy. I mean, certainly if we can see from the questions coming in from the audience, and the response, the very positive response to this topic, it's not easy. We recognize that. So why am I doing it? The executive is going to be asking you, if they're not already, what is our content marketing strategy? It's reached that level of visibility and knowledge that certainly your CMO and VP of marketing have asked, but you might even get some more C-suite questions, and then which quickly follows with the CFO question, which is what am I actually spending on this, and what kind of return am I getting? So being able to start now, putting the benchmarks and materials in place so that you can take the KPIs and create a value metric is critical. And if you take one thing away from this today, I would highly encourage get started measuring and really work to connecting those dots. And we'll spend just a minute or two on how. If we think about, as not beginner in the sense that I'm just getting started with content marketing, but thinking about how do I get started measuring, it's really about the volume and rate of your content. So how much content am I putting out there? How fast am I publishing it? Where is it getting stuck in the publishing process? We talked earlier about if your technology is getting in your way. Many people have zero access to their corporate website, so they just go rogue and build a microsite or use a blog. So let's make sure that you're tracking where things are going. Then, of course, the traffic to your site and to all of your sites, and then certainly we've also been looking at SEO results as well. But when we talk about traffic and traffic to all sites, it's not just your corporate site, not just your blog. You really need to start to aggregate up what's happening in your social networks where possible. I mean, so folks like Facebook and others are getting better at providing more information about viewers and viewership. Wikipedia allows you to track how many page views your Wikipedia page is getting. You bring all that together, you can really start to get a holistic picture about not only how your content marketing initiatives are driving traffic to your main web properties, but also how is that happening, kind of pushing that to the edge and getting it out into the broader network. If we go thinking about at the advanced level, it really breaks down to a couple of different areas. And again, I encourage you to really apply this back to what is your goal? What is your strategy for your content marketing initiatives? But tracking things like engagement, views, comments across all of your channels. I'm thinking about the term we use is thinking about dispersion. So how many likes, shares, tweets are kind of pushing your content further to the edge of your network and actually into new networks. Connection in the sense that content as your prospects are interacting with content in your sales funnel, are you accelerating deals, accelerating purchases through your content? Resonance and really the themes. We talked earlier about themes. What themes are going to work? What themes are driving content, driving traffic to your properties and driving engagement? But you have to think about that in connection to conversions, right? So if your goal is lead gen, and you could potentially get a lot of traffic in the last couple of weeks if you had an opinion about Beyonce's Super Bowl halftime show. If you loved it or hated it, if you had some very interesting take on that, you would have generated a substantial amount of traffic to your blog post. However, if you are selling something completely unrelated to Beyonce Super Bowl ads and whatever else might have been going on there, that traffic is pretty much worthless. So you really need to balance out what is you're trying to achieve against what your objectives are and where those achievements are, so you can know whether or not you have good resonance and good engagement or meaningless resonance and engagement. It looks like we inverted the pyramid this time.
Yeah, you flipped it around upside down. So this is a graphic I put together based on Jay Baer from Convince and Convert. He has an ebook called A Field Guide to the 4 Types of Content Marketing Metrics. And he kind of talks about just exactly what Aaron was talking about. There's it depends on what your goal is. So if your goal is consumption, getting people to just consume your content, then you want to look at Google Analytics, traffic, open rates, stuff that you can get out of your CMS or related analytic tools to say how people are consuming content and if they are at the end of the day. If your goal is to be viral and get your content shared out there, then you want to look at metrics like retweets, likes, forwards. So these may be in your social media system, maybe in your email marketing system to see forwards. If your goal is to leads and drive leads and lead generation, then you may want to look in your marketing automation system and looking for kind of leads generated. And if you're really looking for customer acquisition and how many of them are converting to customers, then you have to go to your CRM system and look at deals. So it really depends on what your goals are. For some organizations, some of these are important or more important than others. So it's not just there's not one single number you need to look at. It's really based on what your goals are, and it may be a combination of these. And
That's
next,
great.
Sorry, we skipped a slide here. Next is voice of the content. And Aaron, I don't know if you noticed in chat window, speaking of voice of the content, someone just complimented you and said you sound like Jim from The Office. So.
I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you. So when we're talking about voice, you're not talking about the voiceover, although maybe depending on your business you might be. But this is something, as you're thinking back to that meal experience we talked about earlier. We put a lot of things out there all the time. We're going to be putting tweets out there. We're tweeting while we're doing this today. This session today. It's really about what does it say. Who are the people that are speaking? What are they saying about your brand? Your message has to do a lot of things today, and it's not enough any longer to just focus on your customers or your prospects. You're really trying to reach people who have no idea who you are, and you really don't control where and how they engage with you like no other time before in history, really. So once you sort of lose control and once you're okay losing control of your message and it starts to disperse out there, you really need to make sure that you've got it, that you're very consistent and that you have at least given some thought to kind of what it is that you want to put it out there. So to help you find your voice, there's a couple of things that you can ask yourself, a couple of key questions you can ask yourself. What does your brand stand for? And on we go. But the key is you've got to match the tone and your style with the audience. If you're selling financial modeling products to the CFO, casual language, tone, silly, kind of lighthearted content's probably not going to work. I mean, it might be fun, you might feel good about it, but it isn't necessarily going to help you close that deal in the C-suite. And you really need to know the essence of your brand as well. I mean, if you're a jeans and t-shirt kind of brand, trying to speak with a buttoned-up three-piece suit kind of message is also not going to work because you're not being true to yourself. We definitely, here at Percussion, like to be a little irreverent, and you certainly see that coming through on many of the activities that we do, and we think, working with marketers, that works pretty well. But at the end of the day, the key is to really carry your style throughout, right? It's all going to hang together. Just like a wardrobe, this is the make it work, right? So if we're doing Project Runway, you definitely want all those pieces to work together. Back to the meal metaphor from earlier, make sure that wine is paired well with your steak, and you'll be in good shape. Which leads us to number 8.
Okay, great. And so number 8 is putting your content to work. So let's say you have addressed all the other 7 challenges we talked about, and you can create content flawlessly, distribute it, and do it in the right voice. How do you get that to meet your marketing goals? Types of questions you may ask is, how do I get people to share it? How do I get it to help with search engine optimization? How do I get more leads from it? And when you look at that, you really have to pick your battles because the way you go about doing it differs based on what your goals are. Is your goal to get more leads? Is it to get more followers, email subscribers? Is it to get more press coverage? Is it to grow your email list? Is it to increase in search engine rankings? Is it to get more sales? There are a lot of different goals you can have for content marketing, and often it's more than one. But based on what your goal is, that'll dictate a lot of decisions you make. And these types of decisions are as follows. Let's say your goal, on one hand, an organization wants to increase the shareability of their content and want people to distribute it and want it to go viral. On the other end, they also want to get leads from it. So these are often in conflict with each other. You have to decide, do I want to have a more shareable format, just starting at the bottom there? Do I want to make it an infographic, which is very shareable, very pinnable, people can pin it on Pinterest, or do I want to have it as an ebook, something that people can't necessarily forward around or publicly repost as well? Do I want to make it short form or long form? Short is usually easier for sharing, long is harder to consume, less likely to be shared. Do I want to have it hosted online, or is it something people have to download and they have to give me their email and title and phone number to help drive the lead generation goal, but that hurts sharing. Do I want to do this on my site? Should this asset only live on my site? And if people repost on other sites, should I send them takedown notices because it's hurting my lead generation goals? Or should I let people post it on other sites, let them repin it, write guest blog posts? So, putting your content to work, there is a way of doing it, but you really have to examine and pick your battles, decide what your goal is and what you want to optimize for, and based on that, you can make the decisions in terms of, do I put a form capture or not? What's the shape, form, size of all the content? So with that, we'll kind of tie it all together. The question is, what do I do now? What do I want to do next?
Here we are at the end. This is the key, right? I'll just a couple things from my side, and then Pawan, I'm sure you've got a couple things to add here as well. I think that there's a lot of content in your organization. It's trapped. One very simple way to kind of get more content, and also I know some people were commenting in the chat about, I feel like I've used it all. Well, I mean, you might have feel like you've used it all, but not everybody's read it all. Just because you tweeted about a blog post last week doesn't mean you can't reuse it next week in something else. The entire world has not read that article yet. You can definitely, pay that off, and we do that all the time. Where we'll, if we wrote a blog post and we'll use that in an email campaign later, that's topical and relevant. I already talked about measurement, so go on. A couple things you want to add?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think this kind of relates to that pyramid that we talked about. That helps you decide quality and quantity, looking at do I want to produce really high quality, time-consuming content, or do I want to kind of get a lot of quick hits out there. It also helps you with the biggest challenge that we saw on today's webinar, which is not having sufficient content. So taking the content that's at the top of your pyramid, slicing and dicing it and making it smaller content that's distributable, or bubbling up a lot of small pieces of content into a more consolidated single asset that you can then distribute. So I think that kind of ties right into developing a content menu with having all different forms of content that people consume, but also unlocking those gems as well, taking something that you can repurpose and distribute in other means. So we have a lot of great questions streaming in through the chat window, and please do start asking them if you have not already. We want to leave you behind with two different things here. The first is an ebook that's available at curata.com, 5 Simple Steps to Becoming a Content Curation Rockstar. There have been a lot of chatter in the window about content curation, and this is a great kind of starter guide to getting started with content curation, and as well as the earlier ebook that I mentioned about how to feed the content beast. So those are both available on our website at curata.com.
Yeah, thanks. And we, and keeping with that irreverence theme, we just posted a quick animation last week about a fun way to look at the content management space and sort of the insanity that is the ongoing merry-go-round. And for those of you who have experienced content management systems for a long time, you probably don't like yours. So we're happy to help you out with that challenge. But I think there's some, like I said, there were some great questions here. And somebody asked if we would get to questions that people ask questions that we're not going to be able to get to in the next 8 or 9 minutes. And I'll certainly commit to taking a look through them, the ones that are relevant. I think since everything is content, I think we can probably turn that into a blog post and get that out to the folks who attended today. Maybe Pawan and I can do a quick Q&A. I'm not video ready. I don't quite have a face for video, so we'll do it by blog.
You do have a voice, though, apparently. So.
I guess. How about that?
Okay, great. So yeah, Anthony, I think we're ready to take questions from the audience.
Excellent. Sounds great, guys. Thank you so much for that. And yes, you are correct. We're getting a ton of questions both here and on Twitter. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right into these. First question we had here came in. This person is saying that they are unable to use their website as part of their content marketing. They're only using their blog currently. So any recommendations on how they can connect the channels?
Sure. I'll take that one real quick. I think many people are stuck, right? Because the website is owned by IT or development, and they're not really able to access it or make changes as rapidly as they would like. Two things, one of which is obviously launch a blog if you don't already. Also look at ways to use microsites as ways to generate more content opportunities. But we'd also, a little self-serving, I apologize, we'd encourage you to take a look at what's out there in the marketplace today, because certainly systems like ours are geared towards more towards the marketer. But there's ways through it. The Eloqua example, they did some fantastic work with simply with their own blog and SlideShare. And actually, sort of ironically, in the early days, it wasn't really connected at all to what was going on the website. So you're not alone, but there is a way through. As long as your message is connected, as long as things are linked, then I think you'll be in good shape.
Perfect. Okay, I appreciate you responding to that one. Our next question, definitely want to make sure we get this one in because we've had it come through from a lot of individuals here. It's a quick, simple, easy question, but obviously a hot topic here. So it is, can you talk about copyright issues around curating?
Sure, and I'll grab that one. Yeah, my kind of mantra for when it comes to curation is curate content, create content, but never pirate content. And I think you really have to keep that in mind. I kind of like to follow the Google rule of thumb. They've kind of set the standards here. And a couple best practices to follow when it comes to curation. One, always attribute the source. Say where you got that content from. 2, prominently link back to the original source. So don't not link to the original content. Don't bury the link somewhere else. Prominently link to there. 3, only share an excerpt of the original content. So if it's the image, share the thumbnail. If it's text, share the most relevant portion of it. And then add value on top of it. Don't just regurgitate what people are saying, but add your own perspective, add your own value, so you do have something else on top. And I think another question that I saw pop up here is about content curation and search engine optimization. Will Google and other search engines treat this as duplicate content? This ties directly back into kind of copyright and ethical sharing of content. If you're sharing the full text of content and not linking to original source, yes, Google will hurt you for that because they're seeing that you're just scraping someone else's website. But if you're only sharing a small portion, if you're prominently linking back to the original site with follow links that search engines can follow, and if you're adding your own value and context on top, whether it's retitling the content, adding your own perspective around there, search engines do not count that as duplicate content. So I think both from a marketing and search engine optimization perspective, but also from a legal and fair use perspective to reward the original publisher and drive traffic, you do want to follow some of those best practices.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Pawan. I appreciate that. As I said, that was definitely a hot one, so I'm glad we got that one addressed. Our next one here, we have a participant here who's looks like he's a former journalist, and he's saying that he tried news aggregation but suffered poor SEO coupled with the copyright concerns like we were just talking about. So his question is, do news-oriented platforms benefit from content marketing, and if so, how?
Sure. So it's hard to comment on the specifics of that, but I think there's a very big difference between aggregation and curation. Aggregation typically is exactly what it's defined, aggregating, bringing things together, whereas curation is being more selective. You're selectively finding the best content, organizing it, annotating and adding context and value, much like a museum curator does when they find artwork. And I think if you're just aggregating content, you may not see the SEO lift because anyone can go and aggregate content. Anyone can go and pull in other people's content. It's really the curation where you add value, and I think that may speak to why that person had some SEO trouble in that particular instance.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that one. And our next question here is, can you talk a little bit more about pulling images from websites when they're going through the curation process there? Websites like the Vern Global site. If you can just expand a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah. Pinterest recently has been a little hot water. They pull in third-party images, but they do the full size. So I think just going back to fair use, you want to pull thumbnails depending on your company's legal guidelines. But thumbnails seem to be kind of the status quo that Google Images and a lot of other brands do themselves. We looked at Intel, for example. So that's I think what I'd recommend when it comes to pulling in images. Excellent.
And it looks like we probably have time for one more question that we can address here. Question is, how does curating content affect your SEO?
Sure. I feel like I've addressed that, but it kind of ties into adding value and not copying the original text and really differentiating from the original source. So I think if you are differentiating from those, then you shouldn't have to really worry about SEO. In fact, it's a value add on top.
Okay, excellent. You answered that quickly, so you know what? I'm going to throw in one more. Can we talk a little bit about just how often someone should be producing new content?
Yeah, I can maybe address that one quickly. As often as you can is the short answer. We've certainly seen as Google has continued to their quest to adjust their SEO algorithm, that more fresher content posted more frequently is going to be better. But that said, you've got to be posting quality content, right? I mean, if you are just posting up schlock, for lack of a better term, it's really not going to have that much of an impact. Though you might rank highly, people aren't going to click on it because it's not going to be that interesting to them. So I think the important thing is to find a cadence that works for you and your industry and your business. But if it's been a week or two and you haven't posted anything new, you probably should get on it. If you can post every day, that's great. But it's not just posting to your blog, but it's also engaging in the various social media channels, thinking about different content pieces on your website. Content that may be dark, that hasn't been visited in a while, maybe it's great content, and you can find different ways to kind of bring that to the fore. Find interesting ways to update content, and then move it around to get more eyeballs into those different areas. That will certainly help your SEO, and it will also create more engagement with your readers.
Excellent. Well, as I said, looks like that takes us right up to our scheduled end time, so we're going to go ahead and wrap things up here. Pawan and Aaron, thank you both so much. Feedback is coming in. It's a lot of information that I think really hit home for a lot of people, so thank you both so much for everything that you presented today. We really appreciate it.
Great. My pleasure.
Thank you.
And just a couple of reminders as we close things out here. We will be following up here very shortly with an email that's going to have the link to the recording as well as a PDF of the slides that were presented today. So please be on the lookout for that. Also encourage you, if you were not on Twitter, there's a lot of great conversation going on there. So please check out our hashtag today was ContentWorks. So please go to there and check out the conversation and add your comments there. We'd love to see that. So in closing, many thanks to Curata and Percussion, who are our generous sponsors today, as well as ReadyTalk, who provided our platform for today's webcast. And if you'd like to learn more about ReadyTalk and their services, please visit readytalk.com/AMA. Last but not least, I'd like to thank you, the audience, for joining us today, for your time and attention, and invite you to keep joining us weekly for these Thought Leader webcasts. That does end our presentation for today. Thank you so much for joining. Have a great rest of your day.